Which won't improve things, trust me.
I know.
At least with me.
We're live? Okay. Good morning. I'm Karen Hiller, the chair of the Social Services Grants Committee of the Topeka City Council. This is our meeting to consider appeals. So with very little preliminaries, we will jump into that. First, if the committee members would introduce themselves. Councilwoman?
Christina Valdivia Alcala, City Council, District 2.
And Tony Emerson, representing District 4.
All right. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes from this committee from July 9 and 19, and then we will immediately go into the appeals. I have a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any corrections, additions? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
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 Okay. Approved unanimously, and we will move on. Agency appeals. We have been through the social, for those who haven't been following, probably everybody who's on has been following, but anyway, we have completed our social service application process and review process and scoring process. Those have been shared with the agencies, and we have 5 agencies that that filed letters of appeal. So what we will do is hear those this morning. This meeting is set from 10 to 12. Our goal is to hear each in order of how we receive them, present their appeal. The committee will discuss and react ideally at that time, unless there's some issue that we feel we need to hold for further consideration. Our goal will be to then make a final decision and our final recommendation to the council before we close this meeting today. If there is a need for us to hold something over, we will schedule a follow-up meeting to do that. That typically doesn't happen, but it is an option, and we want you all to know that. This committee's got a strong history, no matter who was on it, of hearing people through the appeals, and so we're eager to get that moving. We did make a couple of changes in the applications this year. It was a challenging year as well, and we appreciate everyone's work through that, as well as the concepts and ideas for moving forward. And want to fully support that and then vet any issues about people's applications. With that, I would call up the first appeal that I have on the list is Topeka Housing Authority, and if whoever is going to present would come to the mic, we will move on.
And hello, and good morning. I guess we're still there. Trey George with Topeka Housing Authority. I also do have Mary Tucker, who's joining us via Zoom, and she is also been a part of this grant process, has authored it and responded to a lot of the questions. And so if you don't mind, Mary and I will kind of tag team some of these responses. I think that we wanted clarification also, just I guess so we can hopefully improve our application in future years if we're still not awarded this year, and we completely understand it's a competitive process. But we had some questions we just wanted to kind of clarify, I guess. And so there was 3 categories where we were not scored, or 2 we did not receive any score for, and then 1 that we received a partial score for. And so the first one that we did receive the partial score for was the no statistics provided for the surveys. And I guess on that one more so, and Mary, feel free to jump in, I guess I was just looking for clarification. We did cite the 2 surveys that were done previously. And so I guess my question is, if it can be answered, is it the fact that there were clearly not statistics listed in there, or was it felt that the surveys were not, I guess, responded to appropriately?
And we can cover that. I failed on my hospitality and introductions here this morning. For those who aren't familiar, the city 2 years ago decided to contract out to a vendor to manage both the application process and the grant management process, and that is the United Way of Greater Topeka. And so they are here with us today live to answer those questions. They had a panel of experts who are experts in outcomes Outputs and Grant Management, who were actually the team who reviewed this, but United Way has worked with them. So if you all, actually all four of you would introduce yourselves, I think Brett's probably going to take the lead on the responses, but introduce yourselves, please.
Brett Martin, United Way of Greater Topeka.
Jessica Lanhair, United Way of Greater Topeka. Juliet McDiffett, United Way.
Joyce Kotzer, United Way.
Okay.
So,
And taking his questions one at a time, if that's
Absolutely.
fine with you, let's go.
great. So with regard to the demonstrated capacity section, no statistics were provided by the survey. On the two surveys that were referenced in the notes that I have from the grant reviewers, the surveys were referenced, and the way in which the survey was delivered was covered. The grant reviewers did not see information there that indicated, let me pull this fully. Let me pull the score sheet here so that I've got this in front of me. They didn't feel like there was enough information here related to the findings of the survey themselves. So under project has demonstrated need, while there was information about the survey that was there, they didn't feel like there was enough information statistically related to how the survey then demonstrated the community need that the program or that the proposal was seeking to meet. So that there certainly is information here related to the survey, how the survey was carried out, who was the audience for the survey, but they didn't feel like that there was enough information here to demonstrate community need in terms of what the findings of the survey actually were. So that's what they meant by statistics, is in this certain percentage of folks reported this certain percentage of folks who reported that, for example, that would then demonstrate community need.
Okay. And I appreciate that. That helps us in future years. So perfect. Thank you. The other two I think that we were a little bit more confused on was we received 0 points for applicant has achieved outputs and outcomes on prior grants per meaningful measures. And I think on that one, I think we may understand now why. And I guess if I could just clarify. So since this was based off of, that was supposed to go off of the information from the 2020 grant that we were awarded, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so I think, and Mary, go ahead.
Yeah, so I would just say, so if those outcomes were based on it, we were not awarded a grant in 2020. The first grant that was awarded was in 2021. So we would not have any outcomes for 2020 because we were not funded in 2020.
Right.
We have the only outcomes that we have reported to date have been on the 2021 grant, which we have reported only the first quarter of that. But we were not funded in 2020, so there isn't any way that we could have reported outcomes because we're not funded. We can demonstrate outcomes for a multitude of other grant awards that we've received if grant management is an issue, but we were not funded in 2020. So if that outcome data is reflected from 2020, we weren't funded, so we wouldn't have had anything to report to the city.
Right, and on the application, there are actual 2020 number served, number achieved, and then percent achieved on the performance measures on two of those performance measures for actual 2020 in that column that is filled out, number served, number achieved, percent achieved for the first performance measure, and number served, number achieved, and percent achieved for the second performance measure. And on both of those, based on the outcome statements, neither of those met outcomes. And this is the information that the grant reviewers had in front of them. So
the outcomes that are reported were for that first quarter, not for 2020, because again, we were not funded in 2020. The information that's in there for 2020 is what I submitted for the 2020 application, but the outcomes that were reported are for the current year because that's the only reporting that we've done. We weren't funded in 2020.
Right.
So that the application process is somewhat confusing in how it's in the portal, because that's the data that we reported for 2020. That's the information that we had in the application, but we weren't funded. So the only outcomes that reported are for 1 quarter of 2021.
So do we know what was the intent, that we were supposed to provide information based off of what happened in 2020, even though that wasn't a grant year we were funded for?
Yes,
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
because I agree. I think the way that we took it was for the period that we've been awarded, so, or that we've reported
Okay.
on so far.
Right.
And so I think that's probably where we had the misunderstanding of that. And so,
Well, something for actually anybody, and I don't know if this will come up with anybody but you, but we changed the program this year. It used to be that you could do a new program if money was still left,
Right.
and it was a lesser amount. And we decided we really only wanted to fund seasoned programs that had at least 2 years of history. Ideally, then they're in their 3rd year, so 3 years of history. Knowing, and it was a challenge for us to check references and so on, but knowing that in that case, maybe it's the 1st year or there'd been a gap year for a program to be funded by us, but that we wanted that history. We wanted seasoned programs to support, not new ones.
understood.
And
Yeah.
so we were looking, we knew we might have to check references with somebody else
Right.
if we weren't the funder.
Okay.
Does that help to sync that up?
I think so.
It does, but that would have been helpful
Yeah.
in the application process because that wasn't clear. And again, Trey has documentation of multiple grants that we've managed, outcomes received, dollar amounts awarded. Because I do, and that was the question that I really had in 2020 application was, it's really challenging for somebody who is a new grantee to ever get the total number of points if you can't demonstrate successful management in some other way.
Right.
If you don't have any experience with the social services grant, there's not going to be any kind of outcomes distributed with that. So it's really difficult for new grantees to kind of break into it. And so I do appreciate that we were funded in 2021. We are on track for achieving outcomes. And again, we can provide, if data is needed for what actually happened in 2020, we can get that data for you. But we do also have a list of other grant awards, applications, successful grant management that can demonstrate that capacity, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So,
And just for clarification here for the committee, we did not check with THA because they had actuals in for 2020. So on some of those, we did go back and check, but we did not check on THA because they filled it out. So we went with what was in the application, noting that both outcomes were under the performance measures that were given. So
Thank you.
we didn't require further information because we were going off of what was in the grant application.
Okay.
Okay.
And Trey, was that your 3?
Yeah.
Okay. I was
So yeah,
thinking
that was it. Like, and that's what I said. We just wanted clarification just so we better understand, so that then we can make sure we respond appropriately in future years.
Appreciate that so much. And also, we will be doing sessions this fall, which everyone is welcome to come to too, about the process and so on. So if people have input, can get it to United Way or CCS or whatever you want to do now, but we'll be inviting, there'll be a special session in September just on outcomes, which we decided a year ago would be good for all of us to do. And then October and November will be when we talk about the process for next year and set the framework.
thank you.
We look forward to it.
Chair.
Thank you all.
Hang on just a second, Councilwoman.
Question, thank you, Chair. So bottom line is this THA, this application process for THA, it basically had to do with what we're more or less that there was uncertainty on how to fill out the paperwork with this new process that we're going through. Is that what I'm getting?
think so.
more or
Yes.
less?
Yeah, I believe on the
Okay.
outcome
Yes.
side to it, yes, for sure.
Okay.
Yes.
So, and just remind me, Brent, was there training for this as well with the new application?
Yeah, so when we had the application, when we had the grant meeting, when we released the RFP, we walked through every section. We also had technical assistance that was available through staff, through Joyce and Juliet throughout the process.
Okay, thank you.
And I did attend those and reach out, and it may have just been a miscommunication or the way that I understood how we were supposed to complete that. It's my understanding that we were supposed to complete outcomes that we've actually achieved. And so I did that for what we had done in 2021, not for what was in 2020, since we weren't funded in 2020.
Okay.
And what we wanted was outcomes that you had actually achieved no matter where
Right.
you
Right.
were.
Correct.
So,
Understood.
okay.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next appeal is Pappin's Landing Senior Center. Debbie Lake.
Good morning, everybody. First of all, thank you for the sessions. That was going to be one of my suggestions, is that we kind of clarify that, because I could look at that score sheet and try to go back and forth between the grant and the score sheet, and I'm going, I don't know. I don't get this. But it's our understanding that we received the cut due to the outcomes.
Let's stop right there, because that's not so. So if we need to, your score was there, but you had two questions, right? Regarding the drop in the amount of the allocation?
Well,
We'll get to it.
yes, but it was due to the outcomes. Correct? No? What was it then?
They lost a point in their scores. I shouldn't have stopped you. I'm sorry. They lost a point in the score, but then there's kind of a two-track. People get scored, and then based on how those scores fall, then the money gets allocated percentage-wise accordingly. So they'll go back through it.
So there were different areas where there were fewer than the maximum points awarded. So it wasn't just one particular area. There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 areas where there were fewer than the maximum points awarded. They were 1, 2, 3, 4 of those were related to outcomes.
3 out of the 5?
Yeah. 3 out of the 5. So the first one related to that, outcomes are clear and related to identified needs. There were points that, or there were points that weren't awarded there, and the comments from the grant reviewers was that it was unclear if the outcome that was stated here was related to the percent satisfied or the number served. So that whether it was unclear whether it was an outcome or an output in terms of the way the wording was on the outcome. The second one was a plan has been identified to measure outputs and outcomes, and again, we did not have the maximum points awarded there because the reviewers felt like there was a lack of clarity on what those actual outcomes were, again, related to that other area of whether it was unclear whether the outcome was related to the actual number served or the percent of people who were satisfied based on the survey that was given.
That was, and I understand that, because with the issue of changing our report before the second quarter that there was a go between United Way and the city, that they didn't like our wording on the outcomes and stuff, and we had to redo it. And that was done after the grant was sent in, so I think. So I'm thinking that's probably where, oops, I'm sorry. That's probably where that came from, because I took the wording from the way it was before. Okay, okay.
On the next section, applicant has achieved the outputs and outcomes on prior grants per meaningful measures. 3 of the 4 outcomes were met instead of 4 out of 4, so there were not the maximum amount of points awarded there. And then the last section, organization has the resources to produce outcomes efficiently and effectively. That was primarily a budget question. Significant surpluses are given here, but there's no indication of funding coming in for recreation and transportation, which was related to the program itself. So they didn't feel like there was enough information there to indicate whether or not they actually had the resources to produce those outcomes. There were some surpluses, but there wasn't an indication of a funding stream for the particulars of the program proposal in terms of recreation and transportation. So those were the areas where there were not maximum points awarded that were related to outcomes, although that last one on resources is often more of a budget question. So,
Well, the budget is actually broke down from what agencies receive funding. I don't remember anything particular separating all of them separately. I don't remember that off the top of my head. But on the outcome, back to the outcome thing, that's what I was really going to discuss, because that was my understanding of where our score kind of went a little down. And I was, I don't know whether to address that or not. The reason for that, I guess I will, since I'm here and I've done that, or I'm thinking that, and I'm thinking on that track, is those numbers that were reported for that grant was 2020. We were closed half the year for 2020. We couldn't complete that particular outcome for transportation because our focus was to keep our seniors safe and on a vehicle. It's kind of hard to do that. But overall, our others jumped way above what we projected. When we were closed down, we still reached out every day to our seniors by calls. And if you notice, our telephoning calls went up 270%. And we still continued with our other outcomes, our other services, and they were above, but we fell short in transportation. Overall, in the past couple of years, we've gotten a 69% decrease just because we've fallen short of transportation. And, this year, yes, it was more than it was the previous, but the previous was due to 3 people. 3 people. So, over the years, it's almost like $6,000 that we've lost in the past couple of years. So this is very significant to us. So, and my suggestion, and when you said you were going to have sessions, that really pleased me, because I'm going, I guess, and I think I even said this at one of the meetings, is ask the question, be very clear of what you exactly want. Maybe give an example of what you want, because we, just like they did, interpret one way, and that's not the way that you intended for it to be answered. So if there's kind of an example, that may help. Because we want to better our application also.
So just a couple of points of clarification. Thank you for that. In terms of the in terms of the additional numbers that you shared in the appeal, the only thing that grant reviewers have in front of them is the application. So they don't have the additional recreation, home visiting, or telephone, for example, because those aren't listed outcomes within the application itself. Regarding the COVID year, all organizations reported on the same thing across the board. So for some, depending upon the outcomes that were chosen, they could have been hit harder or less hard, really depending upon the outcomes that they chose.
Correct.
And so in this case, with transportation, it would have been especially difficult for you. On the other piece, just to note on cuts, while it feels like a cut, these are one-year non-renewable grants. So
Correct.
there can be a decrease, but it can't
Decre-
actually be a cut, right? Because
It's that word again.
Sure. Yeah.
You guys are the pickiest people when it comes to wording.
well, but I want you to be clear that in a one-year non-renewable grant,
Right.
the only way to cut funding is within that 1 year. And if
Right.
you don't have a cut within that year, it technically can't be a cut because from year to year, every grant is separate and exists on its own.
I just made a note to watch my word.
And so regarding this year and regarding the score itself, I think I can say this, your score was tied with another. And so as a result, the dollars were split.
Oh,
And so
okay.
that accounts for.
That explains another question.
So then,
yes.
when you take that 434,904 as the total allocable dollars, and you take that and you multiply that by your score, there were two, and that was the cutoff, was
Okay.
your score. And so as a result, those two then took those dollars, and those were split between those two programs. So otherwise, in a different scenario where it wasn't the cutoff point and it wasn't a tie, you would take that 81% times the 434,904, and that would be the remainder of the dollars that were awarded
Okay.
in terms of the
That was one of my
terms
other
the
questions.
award process.
And truthfully, this year, people had some pretty darn good scores, and so I don't know if you took advantage of the opportunity to, we've kind of took a risk on that, but I mean, if you need to consult perhaps more next year as you work on it, that could help as well.
I definitely will.
Right.
Because one word means one thing to me and one word means one thing to you guys. And I kind of came across that when we were changing the wording on the report. That was kind of a nightmare, so. And it was due to, I think, what, one word? One word again, so. Okay.
Chair?
Councilwoman?
Thank you. Debbie, I just want to say, anything that I can do to, I know you reached out to me a couple of times and we tried to get things addressed as soon as possible. I do hope you're able to find other funding sources. I know the wordsmithing can be frustrating, but I think that
We are trying.
that as we, change over to this new process where their realm is seriously intense with grants, it's going to be an education, the review process and education for all of us. I am glad that you've been able to come up here and get everything, spoken forward that you needed to, and because that's what this process is about.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you.
Thanks.
If I can throw something in too, a number of us are serving on different committees or different endeavors in the city, and you were involved in our special meeting on senior centers last year. But out of that, for me, advocating for the digital equity is not just talking about kids, has been pretty steady, and I would certainly encourage you to watch for opportunities in that arena
We are.
to serve your seniors, and maybe even as a hotspot in your neighborhood or something like that.
We are.
So you're in a good spot.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. Could Kay speak? She's sorry.
Sure.
Okay.
I'm Kay Gray, and I'm the president of the board at Pappin's Landing, and we do appreciate the financial support that we receive. Even though it was a reduced amount, we're really in need of that to keep the center open. And I think in some cases, we actually achieved what maybe we needed to have on the report, but it's, again, interpretation and trying to get the right things so that it scores better. But we want to keep the center open, and we really need support, and we really appreciate what we've received, but we hope to do better. And because our expenses stay the same and they aren't going down, and we're trying to serve the seniors in North Topeka and keep the center open. And I don't think Topeka wants us to have to close, so we really appreciate the support and the future support on helping with the grant. Thank you.
Thank you, Kay. Thanks for your service, too. Next is Positive Connections, Kathleen Link.
Good morning.
Good morning and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is my first time doing this, so I am a little nervous. As you all may know, I am the new executive director of Positive Connections. I just want to make it very clear that we are the only organization in this community that provides medical case management to individuals living with HIV and AIDS. We have 3 case managers on our caseload. Each case manager has a 70-plus caseload. This city grant does support these 3 case managers. We currently have 220 clients in our program, with 135 of them living in the city of Topeka. Our services, it costs $1,398 a year to provide services to one client. All of our clients are at or below 400% of poverty level. As it stands, we desperately need another case manager, but with the cut of the city funds, it looks like we're going to have to take one of our case managers to part-time. Our case managers keep their clients enrolled in life-saving services, such as Ryan White programs, the Affordable Care Act, housing, food pantry, bus tickets to get to and from doctor's appointments, drug assistance, drug and substance abuse counseling. HIV medications cost over $2,000 a month. We cover these meds with our services. These services not only help people living with HIV and AIDS, it also is huge in keeping our clients undetectable, which keeps them from being able to spread the virus to get new infections here in Topeka. Our budget for the program of the year 2020 is $370,600. The City of Topeka grant is 11% of that total. We've been grandfathered in to being able to request $35,000 because we are the only organization that provides these services. With the cut from $35,000 to $13,586, this total of is a 39% cut. We do have funding from Kansas Department of Health and Environment through the Ryan White program. This program does not require a match, but however, it does require that they are the payer of last resort. These city funds are hugely important to keeping our program going. I know I am new. I am working very hard to maneuver my new duties. Grant writing and reporting is one of them. However, we did not score huge. I don't think we scored terribly. One of the comments was we have not achieved our outputs and outcomes in prior grants to meaningful measures. I'm a little confused at that. I would like some clarification on that if possible.
Right now?
Yes, please.
So thank you for that. Related to the outcomes, The outcome statements that are included here, there are 3 outcomes. And in the 3 outcome statements, the outcomes given are in whole numbers and not in percentages. As a result, then, when you take a look at the outcomes and you compare them to what was put in the table, in terms of the outcomes, you'll find that on 2 of the 3, they are not achieved. So, for example, on one, on the first outcome statement, it's 210 individuals, and the total number achieved in the 2020 actual given is 190. In the second, 210 individuals, again in the outcome statement, and the number achieved is 190. So those would be 2 that weren't met. And the last one, the outcome statement, 160 clients in the outcome statement, and the number achieved there is 168. So achieved there in 1 out of the 3. And based on the wording of the outcome statements in whole numbers, when you compare those to that actual in 2020, it shows that they were not achieved. So as a result, the grant reviewers indicated that 1 of the 3 outcomes was met.
I understand that. And what all of us have experienced is shutdowns due to COVID. So we met our outcomes as best as possible. Our clients did not want to go to the doctors. They did not want to have to ride the city bus. So that is where we had our downfall in that. Another thing was we received a 5 out of 10 for past grant administration. And one of it was that there was 2 emails that were sent to me requesting a change of an invoice. I would like some clarification on that because I have no record of any emails. The only record I have of an email requesting anything like that was from February of 2020. So that was considering the 2019 grant year.
So the response there will have to come from the city. The city scores past grant administration. So the comments we have here, second quarter had an incorrect invoice number and it was requested multiple times. Those are city comments, so I don't have anything here.
Yes, that's what I noted on my notes. I would have to go back to the emails and actually see where they came from.
Okay.
Can you go do that?
Can we do it now? Okay.
Thank you. That's pretty much everything I had to say. I'm sorry. I'm trying. I've never had to stand up and speak in front of anyone like this before. So
You're doing great.
you did good. I do have for the council a packet that I put together of what all our case management program does, what our case managers are required to do by Ryan White. I don't know if you're interested in that.
You know what, we did have a special session because we were considering the set-asides last year, and so I think this committee has them. When we do those 2 sessions in the fall, you're welcome to give us anything anytime, of course, but when we talk about what our priorities are in the fall, that's probably the best time.
Okay,
But,
thank you.
Otherwise, you're doing a good job and get it out to anybody you want,
Okay,
including
thank you.
us. So,
Jeff, did you want to say anything? What would you like for me to do while she's getting the emails?
probably sit with Chuck and we'll go ahead and hear the next one. And
Okay.
we'll see what Rochelle brings back.
Okay, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
having this today.
And welcome. Honestly, it's not uncommon. We have chosen, anybody can always talk to the staff who is doing the grant applications and administration at any time. but often that first year is a little bumpy, we're just kind of learning the system. And so that we, years ago, decided that there should be appeals so people had a chance to ask those questions, and, you know, can be done privately, but that we as the council committee would hear those appeals to make sure everyone had no doubt about being heard. And if there was a change needed, we could consider it at that time. Of course, any change bumps everybody else. So
Correct.
we
I
know that at
understand.
this point. So, but it's important, and we all learn a lot. And so
I have.
thanks for
Thank you.
coming. Okay. Next is Breakthrough House, Inc. and Corey Leon.
I don't believe we have anyone here from Breakthrough House.
Okay. Well, if he comes, we'll tack him on the end. The fifth of our five is Mark Argenbright, Chris Hobart from the Youth Project. Okay. Well, we'll just wait for Rochelle to come back then. Any other?
Chair,
Yes.
so are these entities not here, Breakthrough and Topeka Youth Project?
Correct.
Okay.
So has anybody had a communication from them that they opted not to appeal?
No communication.
Okay,
I guess, Chair, if I could ask a question.
please.
Thank you. Will they, I know right now we're not disclosing the scores and things. Will they eventually get the scores and know where they ranked, or?
So we had that conversation before the meeting. I don't recall us sending the scores of everyone to everyone. The individual agencies have their scores. But I don't recall us sending every score to the whole group, so.
We didn't,
We did not
we haven't
do
done
that.
that?
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
for people's information in general, I think we can share, we had 30 applications. The scores ranged from, well, the first time around, they ranged all the way down to what? I think I've got it.
36 was the bottom.
Okay, ranged from 98 out of 100 to 36 out of 100. We did go through one round where, because of a couple of reasons, we recalibrated the scores and simply did not address the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But it took a score of 81 to get funded. So we had a range from 98 to 81 that were funded. Trying to think, Corey, that we predicted that could creep up, of course, as the years went by, and in a way that seems fair, that if you had the grant before, you learn the ropes a little more and score a little better, and things like that. So we certainly have seen that happen. We know that some agencies, again, the city staff prior and United Way, since they've been our contractor, have been really welcoming to, if people wanted consultation along the way. We tried, again, we've had the sessions in the fall to let everybody have input on what our priorities ought to be and how we ought to do this process, all the way down to the scoring and therefore what's in the applications and so on. Do the briefings at first, and then have us open a process as we can. Frankly, that's to do the best possible job that we can, and also to do it at the committee level. Years ago, everybody showed up at the city council meetings and said their pitch then, and those meetings went, I was one of those directors, so I know, those meetings went till 2 o'clock in the morning. Because it all got, either because people weren't happy with what happened in the hearings, or they just wanted to speak up. And so we've been trying to give everybody the best possible opportunities to work on the grants, as well as be satisfied that the process was fair by doing it at the committee level. And we did, by the way. I mean, we're waiting for Rochelle to get back, but the reason for the recalibration actually was this transition from not even scoring people on past grants, if they hadn't been our grants, to saying, no, we want entities that have 3-year history, and wherever that was, we want to know, we want programs that are seasoned. And so that was a little bit of a difference because they, of course, they're a vendor as well, so they weren't the ones that had the records. I didn't check with other places.
I guess, Chair, any idea how long it'll be?
I don't know.
I just sent Carrie to check. It should be 10 minutes. Can we get 10 minutes and maybe come back?
She's either going to find those old emails or not, right?
If she wrote it, I'm sure she'll find it.
Yeah.
This is almost sound like national politics now, the hidden email server or Biden's laptop or...
Or was it a text message? Yes. Or was it a Facebook Messenger? Or, that's what makes me crazy. Anyway.
Just to let you know, you guys are freezing up a lot. I don't know if there's any way around that, but
I'll quit waving my hands. That's what messes up my home. Maybe that's it.
Chair, would it be possible to just take like a 5-minute break?
Certainly.
Recess, or, okay. I've just got
5-minute break.
That I need to, sorry.
Okay. We got the report back from the source staff on the on the reference on grant management. Who wants to report?
We did find the report, and there was some past grant administration that was deficient, so that's why we gave the score.
Our speaker is Corey Wright, who supervises the housing division, which is the responsible party for the grant management on the city side. Okay, so there was, Kathleen just got it from Positive Connections. Looks like it really did happen?
yes.
Okay, so we're done with that? For the moment. Okay, with that resolved, we have a score sheet as it exists. Is there any suggestion from anyone on the committee that we should change any of the scores and preliminary allocations? Councilwoman Valdivia? You good? Okay. With that, then, I would want to thank everyone for the participation and the appeals. We all learn from that. I would entertain a motion to recommend the allocations as presented to the City Council.
Recommended, motion to recommend to City Council, governing body.
Second.
Moved and seconded to recommend the allocations as presented to the governing body. Further discussion? Any comments?
Chair,
Yes.
I guess my only thing is, and I know in the end it kind of comes down to money, but I think it's important to know that you kind of alluded to the scores were all very high. So nobody here is, nobody here is doing a bad job in all these valuable programs. Mm-hmm. It's just that it's so competitive for these limited dollars. So it's not that anybody messed anything up or is not doing a good job or not doing something valuable for our community. It's
Exactly.
it's just very close. Everybody's doing a great job, and that makes it tough. It'd be much easier if half the people weren't doing a good job. So I know that, again, it's faint praise because it's like, well, you'd rather have the money than hear my platitudes, but it's true. So thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you for that. Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 With that, we have unanimous approval of this, and we will, of this set of recommendations, tremendous appreciation to United Way for doing a great job of the process and the wrap-up. And with that, we will forward these to the council. We have a special meeting already set in September. What's the date, Liz?
September 17th,
Time?
10 o'clock here.
10 o'clock, September 17th here for the special session on outcomes and outputs. We'll work with United Way for getting that program together. We already have dates set. Are they on the calendar, Liz? The city calendar yet?
I'll double check, but I can put them up.
We've got the dates already set for October and November as well for our consideration of next year, how this process went in next year. So you all are welcome to participate or follow. And with that, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I know, he's not even in yet. Nah, it's.